Hello, everybody. Let's begin. Thank you all for joining. This is intended to be an interactive workshop. We'll focus primarily on how to harness our unique ADHD strengths. But first, a couple of words about myself. I'm George. I'm an executive coach. Primarily for executives and founders in tech, but not exclusively. I myself have been in tech for just over 30 years, both as an employee and a founder. I'm currently on my seventh company, and in true ADHD fashion, about to start the eighth. I suspected I had ADHD, but I wasn't diagnosed when I started my coaching practice in 2019. And then when the pandemic hit, all of my carefully honed coping strategies just started falling apart. And I realized that I needed help. So I went and I got the diagnosis. And then over the next couple of years or so, um, I started to realize that the majority of my clients also have ADHD, and this is how I ended up here. So what is the Unleash Your ADHD? It's a group coaching program that I run, and we cover wide variety of topics of interest to founders and executives, anywhere from self-care and increasing your self-efficacy to building an organization that's aligned with your values and your vision. I'll tell you more about the program at the end, but today we're going to focus on harnessing your ADHD strengths. But first, I want to hear a little bit about yours, the people who are joining us today. Type in chat where you're joining us from, and what do you think is your biggest strength is related to ADHD or not? Salt Lake City, Utah. Nice. Thank you. Biggest strength, empathy. Yeah, this is quite common. Northeast England. That's a long way away. Welcome, welcome. Strength is kindness and fairness. Sounds very familiar. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. I think would be an interesting place to start. A good place to start is to ask ourselves, can we even succeed with ADHD? This is a real person posting to my social feed, somebody I know, who at the beginning of this year stepped down from his co-founder and CTO role at his own company because the stress of it was just getting to him and affecting his physical and mental health and his family. And I've been doing this long enough that I've seen this story repeat many times. So sometimes it's really hard to to believe that anybody with ADHD can succeed in business as a founder, as a business owner. And of course, I was happy to see that in 2023, there was a study published that asked that same exact question, and they interviewed a couple dozen people, successful entrepreneurs, and they discovered a couple of interesting things. First is that yes, indeed, it's possible to succeed with ADHD. But look at this quote. Putting something down on paper that says I've achieved doesn't necessarily equate with a feeling of achievement. Oh, how much did I have to go through to achieve this? This is Joe, a study participant. And here's another one. If you took the ADHD factor out of my life, I would have achieved much more. Like, what are we noticing here? These people do not sound like they feel successful. They sound more resentful, maybe even angry at ADHD. What the authors of the study call this is succeeding in spite of ADHD. And they also noticed that um, all those successes, hard-won successes in spite of ADHD, have the same characteristics. All the participants had very low self-efficacy. Essentially, um, they had pretty low confidence in their ability to execute um, whatever is necessary to become successful. And there was a lot of sentiment among the participants about just not reaching their full potential. Folks felt directionless and indecisive, and everybody reported that their entrepreneurial journey just felt hard, and nobody felt truly successful. At best, some participants felt a sense of relief that either have gotten and maybe they don't someplace good and they don't have to repeat this again. Um, can any of you relate? And I certainly can relate. Feel free to type in chat if you can relate. As I said, I'm on my seventh business, and boy, can I relate. But they also discovered that there was another group that felt differently. Here's what Kate, another study participant, said. If you can really harness the positive attributes about your ADHD, it's just like magical. It's just so meaningful. And I love those two words, magical and meaningful. And of course, they discovered that that group also had common characteristics. The participants were more self-aware of both their strengths and their limitations. They felt at peace with themselves and with the entire package, all the quirks and the flaws and the strengths. They found the way to redefine their success, or what success looked to them. They had pretty high confidence in their ability to do whatever it took to become successful. All of them attributed their success to being able to harness their strengths. And as a result, they more readily embraced success and felt successful. And that got me thinking. First of all, this looks remarkably like a roadmap to authentic success, but we'll get to it. But I also started thinking about if I can think of people who match this profile. I thought of Richard Branson, this is pretty famously known founder of Virgin, who has ADHD. There's David Neeleman, founder of JetBlue, also has ADHD. Cara Golding, founder and CEO of Hint Water. There's even a YouTuber and inventor, Simone Yach, also famously known for her ADHD quirkiness. So clearly there are people who are achieving this. But first, what else also emerged in that study was that ADHD strengths had this paradoxical nature to them, meaning that the same traits could be both beneficial and disabling in some way. So is ADHD a superpower or is it super disabling? Well, it's both, right? For example, my distractibility might be a problem when I tune out a presenter in a meeting. But it also helps me to notice that one quiet person sitting in a corner and afraid to voice their concerns. So my distractibility is both beneficial and detrimental to me at the same time. And here lies the challenge for us. Paradoxes by their very nature don't have a resolution. I cannot decide that my distractibility is my superpower and fully lean into it. And I cannot do the same. You cannot call it a disability because then it's limiting. It's limiting my potential. So I have to find a way to balance and manage this paradox. And then the other question is, are we dealing with ADHD traits or ADHD states? Because a trait is something that's relatively stable. It tends to be consistent across different situations and often has a genetic or long-term developmental basis. A state, on the other hand, is a temporary condition. It can change depending on external or internal factors, and it's more situation dependent. So, is my distractibility a trait or a state? What do you think? Type in chat. It is an interesting question, isn't it? Well, I'm not gonna hold the answer from you. It is both. Again, it's I'm just genetically predisposed to be more distracted, so it's a trait. But I'm also not distracted all the time. Sometimes I'm hyper focused, so it's also a state, which is all great news. I can't change my traits, but I can absolutely do something about my state. Um, I think about the role of technology and perhaps exposing the trait and state. Yeah, absolutely. So, all of that led me to creating this list. This is just some of the many things that I could think of, the traits/states of ADHD. Um, and what's interesting is that you can clearly see like the duality of ADHD in this list: distractibility versus hyperfocus, impulsivity versus quick decision making. Like there's clearly a detrimental and a beneficial side of it. I'm curious if any of you can spot yourself in that list, and if anything kind of jumps out of you that you can relate to. RSD and empathy. Yep, same. Yeah. And I'm sure we all can spot. Lauren says I absolutely can spot my relatable traits. Yeah. And this is just the things that I could fit on slide. Once the levee broke, I just couldn't stop writing it down. So how do we get fewer of these detrimental parts and more of the beneficial manifestations of these traits and states? Well, remember this picture that I said almost looks like a roadmap? Let's build an actual roadmap. Let's turn this into a roadmap to authentic success. We'll start with self-awareness, as is tradition. If you're my client, you have heard me a million times saying that everything starts with self-awareness. You cannot accept that you're not aware of. You cannot fix or change what you're not aware of. So, what does it look like working on self-awareness? Well, first of all, it's enhancing your metacognitive ability, which is the ability to recognize your own thoughts and emotions and cognitive states. So in plain English, it means being able to tell you're distracted as it's happening and not a couple of hours later. And the most direct way I know to enhance your metacognition is meditation. Which is a rather large topic, and I'm writing a book a bit about it, and I've done a workshop about it and planning to do one in the future. Well, for now, I just want to say that if you tried meditation and didn't stick with it, there is hope. There's a lot of misconceptions out there on the internet about what meditation is and what isn't. And the short, the TLDR here is that you don't need to sit um, in a quiet room for 30 minutes and try to completely empty your mind. Just listening to ambient sounds in the room for a couple of minutes is enough. Um, the next is recognizing that both traits and states related to ADHD, like use the previous list that I've created. Um, over time, you learn to recognize those situations in your life. You do find your own patterns, and you find like your own individual triggers that trigger the at different states. So I'm curious, type in chat. Have you tried meditation, or do you have any other thoughts about how you can increase self-awareness? Love meditation, Lauren says. Yep. I've been meditating since early 90s. Hasn't been always smooth sailing. Rebecca says I meditate daily, love it. Yep. This is, like I said, the most direct way to increase um, your metacognition and self-awareness. I discovered Jeff Warren. He also has ADHD. Yep. Thank you. Next, self-acceptance. And what that looks like is recognizing that the ADHD traits can be both beneficial and challenging, often simultaneously. It's like intellectually, I think most of us agree it feels intuitively right, but internalizing it and accepting it as the reality is a separate conversation entirely. You can know both positive and negative, manifestations of your ADHD traits and states in a journal. That's a good practice. And practice reframing the negative experiences by looking for potential benefits as well. Acknowledging that those ADHD traits are part of your code for identity and not just symptoms to be treated or eliminated. Again, journaling is a great practice. For example, you can create a list like the one I created and see if you can recall stories from your life that match the pairs on the list. Accepting that states will fluctuate, and that's okay. If you're tired, you're going to be more distracted. Dysregulated, more symptoms will show up. Overall, and enhancing your self-acceptance is about embracing your whole self, including all the complexities and challenges that come from ADHD. It's about shifting from viewing ADHD as something to overcome to like seeing as as an integral part of who you are. Um, who is struggling with self-acceptance here? Type in chat. Lauren says, yes, reframing, rewiring is a result of journaling and recorded patterns and insights. Yep. An everyday struggle. Yes. Redefining success can include recognizing situations where your ADHD beneficial. Again, refer the list that I shared earlier. This also involves finding and creating environments and situations where your ADHD traits can shine. Valuing your unique ADHD the ADHD contributions of, well, like unique perspectives or like unique approaches that you have to problems that come from ADHD. I find it helps to, create a unique value proposition for yourself, sort of the same way you would create it for your company. Then measuring success by personal growth and authentic expression. This is a big one. And I recommend spending some time thinking and writing about your personal values. And I have a free workbook. If anybody's interested, I can share. It's it has a 5 steps that walk you through recalling the situations and stories from your life and extracting the implicit values from those stories. Does this make sense so far? I want to pause here. We're at about halfway. Interested in the workbook. I'll share all these resources in email after this workshop. Increasing self-efficacy. Developing strategies to leverage your beneficial states. This could involve figuring out your most productive states and when in the day they're happening and on which environment they're happening, and creating rituals around it that support those states. I, for example, have a favorite co-working space where I'm sitting right now, Silicon Valley Capital Club. And I have a couple of playlists on my phone that reliably get me in the most productive states. Then learning to shift states when needed. Some practices I can recommend. Experiment with something more physical, like do a few jumping jacks. That helps to create a physical transition from one state to another, or do a grounding exercises. For example, the one that I described, listen to the ambient noises in the room for a couple of minutes. My own coach had me create a stage shift toolkit, she called it, of sorts. And then through ADHD fashion, I even recorded a couple of guided meditations for myself, complete with original music. You don't have to go that far, but think about what things help you to become present and shift that state to something more beneficial to the situation you're in. Lauren says, question for you, George. Any insights on nutrition, homeopathy, and yeah, I'm not a nutritionist, so I'm not going to give you any professional advice on it, other than to say that absolutely nutrition plays a pretty important role. I'm sure you've been in a situation where you have a indulge in something and then regret it immediately for the rest of the day. Just simply paying it, even without like digging really deep into the nutritional specifics and the science of it, just paying attention to how different foods affect you is a fantastic first step. Use environmental cues. I use my MacBook, for example, and in my home office for working in marketing and bookkeeping. And then I have a separate device, my iPad Pro, for writing. And when I grab my iPad and I sit at a table at a coffee shop, I've done it enough times that the environment itself puts me in the writing state. And you can find lots of other tricks. Internet, TikTok, Instagram, just full of little tricks. Don't take them all seriously, but try and see what works for you. In my own experience, certain foods, patterns, etc. I'm a little I'm very science-based coach, and so I'm a little wary of giving advice that I don't I can't like, support with evidence or with hard science that I read and I understood. Um, so we can take it offline, and I would be more than happy to share my experience with you, Lauren. But this is going to be recorded and published, and I don't want to propagate any false information. I hope you understand. Um, any questions about the self-efficacy so far? Okay, let's move on. Identifying your harnessing the strength. So this is kind of a two-parter in my mind. There's identifying your unique strengths, um, not necessarily specific to ADHD. And you can take a Gallup Strength Finder assessment, or what I like, and I have helped many of my clients do, simply ask a dozen of your closest friends and colleagues, people who know you really well, what is that one thing that seems to come easy to me that other people seem to struggle with? What's interesting, I helped, I don't know, probably a couple of dozen people to ask that question, and not a single one of them was surprised by the results. But it really helps to hear it from other people. It gives you a very different awareness of your strengths. Identifying situations where ADHD traits become superpowers. For example, by creating a list similar to what I shared. Cultivating environments that allow ADHD strengths to flourish. And as the founder, you have a unique opportunity to build that environment that works for you. So take it. And I'm curious if you had any thoughts about how you can build that environment. What would that look like? Share and chat. One of the things that I talk to my clients very often is delegating and hiring as early as you're able to. There are certainly situations where you just cannot afford to hire a bookkeeper, for example, when you're just starting, and you cannot avoid doing that. Um, Very understandable. But most founders, in my experience, wait too long to hire somebody to help them with a task that they're not uniquely a, a good at. And that basically creates a situation where you spend a lot of your energy on doing things that other people could have done better, faster, freeing you up for something that you're uniquely good at. And it very often leads to a business failing. Materials, environment, and people centered. Yep. Lack of self-awareness is a big one. Yeah. Lauren is asking why I think that's happening. But also fear. We wrap ourselves in our businesses, our egos so tightly that it's really hard for us to it becomes hard for us to give away control, because you cannot delegate without giving away control. Uh, that's called assigning tasks. And if you just assign tasks, that you still have that mental um, and cognitive load that you have to make sure that it has been delivered according to your expectations and according to your um, standards of quality. So it's not true delegation. Delegating requires of letting it go and trusting to another person to do a good job, even if you don't necessarily agree on the specifics of it. I think that's, at least in my experience, that tends to be a big area where we focus and uncover a lot of assumptions and a lot of fears. likely self-acceptance, related to ego, fear, etc. Yep. Last, but certainly not least, it's really hard to overestimate the importance of external support systems for us founders with ADHD. Is someone, a community, someone to workshop your ideas with and body double on um, unavoidable but boring tasks. Like if you can't afford to hire a bookkeeper, for example, and still need to do it, doing it with somebody um, unlocks that and allows you to finish the task, hold you accountable when you're slacking off, or offer you a shoulder to lean on when you're struggling. The value of the community is really hard to overestimate. So I urge you, all of you, to find a supportive community for yourself. And it doesn't have to be one of my Unleash Your ADHD programs, but if you want to check it out, we're starting 2 cohorts in September, and I'm happy to offer a special introductory price to 4 of you today. This is the part of the workshop where I'm going to walk you through that, the program, what it looks like, how to apply, and then after that, we'll leave time for questions and answers. Here's what one of our clients had to say about working with us. George helped me take my career to the next level despite struggling with ADHD. What's interesting about Matt's case, when he came to us, he was stuck on that hard-won success path. He wasn't making any progress. He's extremely bright individual and extremely hardworking. But it's a mistake that many people with ADHD make. They just try to work harder, and you can't work harder your way out of ADHD. He would often start his day with an enormous to-do list and the best intentions for today to be more productive than yesterday. And then by late afternoon, he would find himself distracted and his to-do list is barely touched. And then I'm sure it's all familiar to us. The shame and anxiety kicks in and starts playing on repeat in your head. He would experience that. And because he was hardworking and achievement was one of his core values, he would routinely stay up past midnight trying to catch up. And then the next day, the cycle would repeat again. But after only 3 months of working with us, we were able to help him recognize and interrupt that pattern. And since then, he co-founded a company, became a distinguished faculty member at General Assembly, and chairs the executive board of Statistics Without Borders. Just incredible success. But I think more importantly, he goes to bed at a reasonable hour nowadays. And is far from unique. Since I started my coaching practice, we helped over 200 people like Matt. So what does the program look like? It's a monthly in-person or virtual group facilitated by me and one of my colleagues. The groups are small, 6 to 8 people max. We often have guest presenters. In September, we'll have a clinical psychiatrist who works with ADHD patients and has ADHD herself come and talk to us about her professional and personal experience. The diagnostic criteria, the medication management, disclosure work, and many, many other topics. Of course, you know the value of the support you can receive from the community of like-minded people who understand your unique struggles. And a lot of magic also happens in our private community between the sessions. We offer 2 options to participate. We have an in-person group that meets for a full day, 9 to 4, at various locations around the San Francisco Bay Area. Our next session is going to be right here where I'm at the moment in Silicon Valley Capital Club in downtown San Jose. And we have a virtual group that meets on Zoom. Here's how to join. You apply for a trial day. The application is free. If we'll schedule a call with you to learn more about you and your business, and if you qualify, we'll send you a link to pay for the trial day. The trial day is $300 for in-person group and $99 for the virtual trial day. The trial day is a great and risk-free way to experience the program. You can get to participate alongside our existing members, and you get insights you can apply to your business immediately. Connect with people, network, and there's no obligation to sign up after the trial if you didn't think it was beneficial to you. If you apply today, I'm offering a special price to 4 of you, and you'll lock that price for the rest of the year. This concludes my official part of the presentation. We still have 20 minutes left, so I'm happy to answer any of your questions. If you have to run, I'm not going to get offended, I promise. Lauren, feel free to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much for the insights and the experience, your personal experience that you've shared. I appreciate it. I'm curious, what do you think might overlap from the individual to the organization? And what I mean specifically is I work in software consulting. So we are a software development agency, and we partner with lots of founders and lots of tech leaders. As you mentioned, I don't think it's I'm noticing that a lot of folks today have diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD, right? Just like the level of information, the frequency of information, the types of tools and technology, right? Everyone is just super distractible. And I'm curious if you have any insights in terms of what carries over from the individual to the organization level, and how some of these tactics like the roadmap, self-awareness, self-acceptance, right, can influence both performance and success at the organization level.
Good question. Thank you. I think absolutely there's a lot of commonalities, and what sometimes is easy to forget, especially in larger organizations, that organizations, companies are a reflection of their leaders. If a leader doesn't have a handle on their ADHD, it's going to spill over everywhere in the organization. So that's one way where there's a connection. Another one is ADHD, the diagnosis is like a collection of a diagnostic criteria, like the behaviors. And organizations exhibit all the same behaviors. We don't diagnose organizations and don't prescribe medications to organizations, but the same coping strategies that an individual would use, you can also use at the organizational level. Self-awareness, self-acceptance, value-based processes and systems. All of this applies to individuals and organizations as well. Does that answer your question, Lauren?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Well, thank you everybody for coming and joining us today. You will receive the recording. I'll also follow up with a few things that I promised in the call, like the values workbook that I have. And I will include a feedback form, and if you can spare a couple of minutes to answer the questions, I would highly, highly appreciate it. It helps me to tailor the content better, and the delivery and everything else. Thank you, everybody, so much. Have a nice rest of your day.